Yo, dudes, good to see you. Here's a chain lightning build you can use to level up if you want to. I think this build has been pretty fun, and I just want to share it with you. In Season 1 of the Malignant, we got new Malignant hearts, and they're going to be in the jewelry slots on all of your gear. And without further ado, we're going to check out the gear on this class, the skills, and then the Paragon board where I'm at, but a full link to the build will be available in the description. Starting off with the helmet, we're going to be looking for the Exploiter's legendary aspect. You have increased crowd control duration with Exploiters, and you also deal additional up to 40% multiplicative damage against enemies that are unstoppable. The ideal roles for the helmet would be maximum mana, maximum life, and cooldown reduction, as well as all stats. CDR got nerfed recently, so the caps that we could hit, the ranges we could hit for cooldown reduction are quite limited on the Sorceress, and even still doing that, I've been leveling up with a two-handed weapon, as you'll see here, and it's been okay, but it could be better, because you have cooldown reduction implicit on an offhand if you want to go that way. But you'll see why we're using a two-handed weapon in just a little bit. As for the armor, I was lucky enough to hit Raiment of the Infinite, and Raiment of the Infinite is hard to replace. If you don't have this, you could try a Protector aspect on your armor, and then it's hard to even say then like how good that is, because the ability to teleport in and stun things is important for the build. When things are stunned, we do more damage. When things are stunned, we get mana back. Raiment is just, if you play a Sorceress, you'd know it's like, it's so amazing for every Sorceress build. Does good damage, like I said before, and it gives you that defensive option of stunning everything so they're not hitting you. It's just incredible. And the Vacusuck, where it pulls it in, is also exceptional with Season 1 of the Malignant, and it's always been good. So go for Raiment of the Infinite if you can get it. If not, find a chest piece with Protector aspect if you're lucky enough. As for the gloves, we're going to be using Control. Control gives us the ability to deal more damage against things that are immobilized, stunned, or frozen, which is what we're always doing with Frost Nova or with Chain Lightning, through the use of Malignant Hearts or even Raiment of the Infinite. Stunning all the time is nice. The ideal roles for the gloves would be things like +2 ranks of Chain Lightning, critical strike chance, attack speed, and critical strike damage with lightning. As for the pants, we're using Disobedience aspect, one of the best legendaries aspects in the game for the defensive suite for any character. And with the recent nerf to Obedience, we're down to 30% increased armor for 4 seconds whenever we deal any form of damage. So outside of basic skills giving you 20% damage reduction, getting 30% increased armor isn't all that bad. If you think that you're doing enough damage, you could move Disobedience to the necklace slot, even though I don't recommend it. Again, this class will deal damage. It's just about staying alive in those sticky spots, and Disobedience absolutely helps with that. And now the best rolls on the pants that you could possibly get would be things like maximum life, damage reduction, total armor, and damage reduction from things that are burning. This class will always burn things because, I'll show you right here, for the enchantment slots, I'm going to recommend that you use Firebolt enchantment as well as Frozen Orb enchantment. Okay? And then finally for the boots, we've got Eluding Boots, Becoming Injured. So when we're less than 35% of our HP, we can move around and we're unstoppable, right? And we're unstoppable for 4 seconds, and then there's some duration. This effect can only happen once every so many seconds, and I forgot this roll on 32 seconds. So the closer to 20 you get, the better it is, because you want to be able to be unstoppable as often as possible. And the most optimal rolls for the boots would be things like mana cost reduction, movement speed, plus ranks to teleport, and Frost Nova. You can see here I have that. I'm just missing that one little bit of mana cost reduction, so it stings, but it's not that bad. As for the weapon, let's have a look at this thing. So I was lucky enough to get an 809. I don't know what's going on this season, but items are rolling nicely. So I got an 809 staff with plus 25 item power because I leveled it up at the blacksmith. And weapons. So what we're going to put on this is the Unbroken Tether legendary aspect. You can get this from the seasonal journey. I think it's at chapter 3. Let me verify that for you guys. In chapter 3, you get the Unbroken Tether right there. So as long as you're doing your seasonal journey in season 1, you have this that you can use from the Codex of Power, which is awesome because 30% isn't all that bad. When put on a two-handed weapon, remember, it's going to get the benefit of getting additional 100% increase. So at a minimum, it's plus 60%. That's just how that works. So I've got a better roll. Chain Lightning has up to a 80% chance, right? I've got 78 here to chain 2 additional times, which is kind of nice. And you'll see how we benefit from our ring actually here, the recharging loop. Each time Chain Lightning bounces off of us, we gain 6 mana, which is nice because when we're dealing damage one-on-one with like a boss, we're constantly getting mana back to cast more Chain Lightnings. And you'll see that in the gameplay video at the end of the video. But again, two-handed weapon. We're using this instead of a one-handed weapon and a codex. Now you could use, I say codex and offhand. You could use a one-handed weapon and an offhand if you want to get better cooldown reduction, but you're going to pump some big numbers out of a two-handed weapon. That DPS is pretty solid. And let's go over the ideal stats for this thing. Critical strike damage, lightning critical strike damage would be ideal, vulnerable damage, and intelligence. Now, I'm not doing too bad here. That's working for us, and the damage is okay. And you'll notice in the weapon I'm using sapphires. We deal increased critical strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Things that are crowd-controlled are affected by things like stun, things like frozen, things like slow. All those things are forms of crowd control, and we apply that vigorously in this build. It's kind of nice, but yeah, I'm opting for a two-hander, and again, it's up to you. It doesn't have to be a two-hander if you can't find a good one. Go with a one-handed wand and an offhand if you'd like to. And then you could also get an additional legendary aspect, which you could use like accelerating or something like that. Could be kind of nice. Let's check out the necklace here, Elementalist's Chain. So the Elementalist legendary aspect is what we're going to use. Core skills cast at or above 100 mana will gain some amount of increased critical strike chance. Now, obviously, you want this to be 60%. I just did this with 30, and I've been doing okay. The optimal rolls for the amulet would be things like cooldown reduction, mana cost reduction, all defensive skills increase, and elemental dominance passive if you can get that. And let's see if I can show you the elemental dominance passive here. Your core skills and mastery skills deal some amount of multiplicative damage while you have over 50 mana. So 50 mana, if you look at the mana pool right now, I've got 145, and this is increased through the Paragon board, but 100 is the full orb. So as long as you've got over half mana, you're dealing increased damage, and the amulet requests that, hey, if you can get that roll, you're going to deal increased multiplicative damage, which always helps. So go for those if you can. I've got cooldown reduction, I've got conjuration skills, I'm getting nothing for it, but I'm pretty much using this because I like damage reduction on my character, especially on a sorceress, and the +3 ranks of defensive skills isn't all that bad either. Okay, and we're going to talk about Vicious Hearts at the end. So let's check out the rings here. Ring of the Umbral and Rings of the Recharging Loop, both these aspects. So again, recharging whenever Chain Lightning bounces off of us, the sorceress, or sorcerer, we get mana back, okay? 6 mana, it's a range 4 to 6. The higher the better, you get more mana, you do more Chain Lightnings, it recharges faster, and off we go. Let's have a look at Ring of the Umbral here. So we restore some amount of mana, in this case 4. 4 of our primary resource, which is mana, whenever we crowd control an enemy. And again, CC is stun, frozen, or slow, okay? So Umbral's really nice because you can get this in your Codex of Power. Even though it's 1 mana, everything helps. And the higher this value goes, the more fluid the game's going to feel. So try to get Umbral of 4 if you can. It's tricky, man. You're going to use your Obols and just farm. Farm Hell Tides all day long and see if you can get an Umbral. Anything closer to 4 is better and will make the gameplay feel much more smooth, I promise you. Now, stats that you want to get or affixes you want to find on the rings, things like critical strike damage, critical strike chance, vulnerable application, and lightning critical strike damage would be good. If you don't care so much about doing all that crazy top-end damage, you could give up some lightning critical strike damage. See, I only rolled lightning damage here. You could give that up for HP, life in this case, so you're even more tanky. And I would recommend you do that if you're pushing higher tiers or you find yourself struggling on the class. And again, both rings would follow that, so you're looking for maximum life if you want it to become more tanky, or critical strike damage and chance with vulnerable. Now let's talk about Malignant Hearts here. I'm using Tall Rosh's, so you'll see here Tall Rosh's Vicious Heart. For each unique element you deal damage with, you deal some amount of increased damage for some amount of seconds. And the range on this one, I think it was a level 4 Tall Rasha, is 11.5% multiplicative damage for each element that we deal for 7 seconds. So we are already getting, and this I'll show you here in the skill tree, we're already getting Fire because Firebolt says direct damage from skills, which is Chain Lightning, applies up to an additional 23% burning damage over 8 seconds. So if we Chain Lightning something, it's already taken lightning damage, it's already taken fire damage. And then we have the option with Frozen Orb to cast Frozen Orbs whenever we cast a skill, a non-basic skill. And the cool thing is, non-basic skills, if you weren't thinking about it, these are all non-basic skills, all of our defensive skills. So Teleport could cast a Frost Nova. And Teleport, when you land, will also deal lightning damage. So that's lightning, then burning, then Frozen Orb, right? Same thing, Frost Nova could cast a Frozen Orb. Flame Shield could cast a Frozen Orb. And you get it, and you get the whole idea. So for Tall Rosh's, that's awesome. And the other thing with Tall Rosh's, which is kind of neat right now, at the time of making this video, is we're using the Barber. Everybody's using the Barber. So this Wrathful Heart is a white heart. It can go anywhere you want. And what this is giving us is anytime we critically strike and all subsequent damage, so all attacks within a certain time period are then multiplicatively enhanced, and the damage dealt to a single target will explode on everything around it. And Chain Lightning is dealing damage to everything, so for 3 seconds, everything Chain Lightning is bouncing off of hits everything, okay? And the way this works is shadow damage. It's shadow damage, actually. So because the immunity, when you use this, you'll see immune a lot. The immunity is shadow damage, so you're getting shadow, lightning, cold, and fire damage, which actually helps your Tall Rosh's go to a 4x multiplier. And you'll see it here when you're playing the game, that Tall Rosh's is at 4. So the multiplicative damage percent is actually increased tremendously. And in addition, the way Barber works is it's some amount of damage is completely absorbed, right? And then for every second that damage is absorbed, it gets multiplied by 14% per second. So 14, 28, 42, and off we go. Barber is unbelievable. Wrathful farm for this. It's a Wrathful gem, Wrathful Heart. So farm Malignant Tunnels for this thing. Get your hands on one. In my opinion, I think the closer to 2 seconds, the better for dungeon play. If it's a longer duration, you probably want to go like a boss fight. You'll probably want to go for 4 seconds to get the full ship and shebang out of it. Now, if it's beyond, like you see it's 3.2, you're not getting anything for that 0.2, so be as close to the full second as you can, and that's how you get that multiplicative damage increase, okay? And then finally, I've got this, the Devious Heart. After spending some amount of mana, in this case 153, of your primary resource, right? Your next attack stuns enemies for 4 seconds. And the stun is very good because in our build, we get mana every time we stun, right? So when things are stunned, they're CC'd, which is huge for us. We're getting mana back, life is good. And so every time we spend 153 of our mana, we're going to get a stun on deck, which is very, very helpful. Now let's go over the skills for a second. From the top, we have 1 point in Firebolt because we need it for our enchantment system, and that's going to be put in at level 15. We then main Arc Lash all the way up into Enhanced Arc Lash and then Glinting Arc Lash. Moving down, 1 point into Frozen Orb, 1 point into Enhanced Frozen Orb, and 1 point into Greater Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb's explosions have a 30% chance to make all enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds, and Frozen Orb always makes frozen enemies vulnerable. So we're kind of trying to make sure things are vulnerable all the time so we do even more damage. And both of this, so Firebolt and Frozen Orb, go into our enchantment system. Frozen Orb at level 30, Firebolt again at level 15. Continuing on, we max out Devastation, we then max out Elemental Dominance. We're putting the rest of our points into Chain Lightning because we are a Chain Lightning build, and this depends on how you want to play it, but I put 1 point in Enhanced Chain Lightning so I have the choice to go between Greater Chain Lightning or Destructive Chain Lightning. If you like the Crackling Energy playstyle, you can go with that. I'm going with the 10% multiplicative damage with Chain Lightning bounces off of me, which is great for bosses. We just really start to nuke targets when it matters most. I've got 1 point into Flame Shield, 1 point into Enhanced Flame Shield, 1 point into Shimmering Flame Shield. I then have maximum points into Teleport to get that cooldown reduction even faster. I then have 1 point into Enhanced Teleport, 1 point into Shimmering Teleport. So we get damage reduction for 3 seconds after we teleport. So we teleport in, we have damage reduction for 3 seconds, everything's stunned with Raiment of the Infinite. Life is good when we're teleporting around. We then have Glass Cannon maxed out with 1 point from Raiment of the Infinite, bringing it to 4. We have 1 point into Ice Armor, 1 point into Enhanced Ice Armor, and that's where we stop it right there. While it's active, our mana regeneration's increased by 25%, and you can certainly feel that when it's there. We then have a rank 11, 7 item contribution, okay? Rank 11 Frost Nova, so 4 points. 1 point into Enhanced Frost Nova, and 1 point into Mystical Frost Nova. It makes enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds, increase to 6 seconds against bosses, which is pretty sweet for Stagger. Staggering when we're teleporting, we stun, right? Staggering when we Frost Nova, and then also with our Malignant gem, we're staggering as well. So we're really trying to push that stagger bar as much as we can. Additionally, 2 points to align the elements, 3 points in the mana shield. Every time we spend 100 mana, not only are we starting to stun things because we're getting closer to 153, but we also get 21% damage reduction for 5 seconds. Not the worst thing in the world. And then we max out protection, 3 ranks. Using a cooldown grants us some amount of our life as a barrier, and barrier play is kind of nice. So we go with that to stay alive. 1 point into Inner Flames with 3 points into Devouring Blaze. Moving on, 1 point into Permafrost, 3 points into Hoarfrost. We deal 9% increased multiplicative damage to chilled enemies and 18% increased multiplied damage to frozen enemies. Thank you, Frost Nova. Very sweet. And then finally, we're going to be using Veer's Mastery. Close enemies take 10% increased damage from us, and that's multiplicative. They take increased damage from our shock skills, which Chain Lightning is, and we deal 20% less damage to us. And then critical strikes increase these bonuses by 25%. So that's why we're getting really up close and personal with Chain Lightning, because Veer's Mastery pays us off huge if we do. Having a look at the Paragon board, we start off using Elementalist. We have increased non-physical damage, which is all of our elements, and we get increased resistances to elements, which is cool. So that's level 15 at the moment. I would recommend you push these all the way to 21 when you can. But my gameplay is get your glyphs to 15, and this is for leveling. Get your glyphs to 15 that you're using so that the radius goes to 4 from 3. Every rare node, or every rare glyph, excuse me, every rare glyph starts off at range 3. And then it goes to range 4 when you hit level 15, so that should be a priority for you. Elementalist. And then we move up into the Static Surge board, and the glyph we're going to use here is Control. So we deal 60% at the moment, 60.9% increased damage to crowd-controlled things, which is pretty much all the time. But then we deal 10% increased multiplicative damage to things that are slowed or chilled, or here's the nice part, 20% multiplicative damage to things that are stunned or frozen, which is, again, Frost Nova, or our Malignant Heart, or Raiment of the Infinite stuns, right? All that jazz comes together, so really taking advantage of Control. Moving into the next board here, we've got the Burning Instinct board, and the glyph we're going to use is Flame Feeder. So we'll deal increased damage to burning enemies, and we deal, again, multiplicative damage direct to burning enemies, which they're always burning because of Flame Bolt, okay? And then we attach the following board over here, which is Ceaseless Conduit, and the glyph we're going to use here is Destruction. Increased critical strike damage, and then additionally, critical strikes increase all damage the enemy takes from me by 2% up to 12% for 10 seconds. So for bossing, destruction's nasty because we just keep sending in the damage, right? And if it's bouncing off of us from our ring, we're getting more mana back. We're doing multiplicative damage because it bounced off of us through our skill tree, and now we're just going to keep punishing this guy. Sorceresses don't have a big issue dealing damage. And then finally, we have another board here, Elemental Summoner, and we're only getting this board to pretty much get some damage reduction, Reservoir, and things like that. So as I was building the board out, as I level up, I'll continue to invest for some more defensive nodes. Things like Reservoir is good, giving us more max mana, which is what we want, because we want to be over 50% to get that damage multiplier. And yeah, that's it. So keep going. And again, the full link to this build will be in the description. Things like Kindling would be nice to get. Again, damage to burning enemies and elites. And then the all stats requirement on our gear will help get willpower, will help get all the other things that we need for our rare nodes. Like as you go through, you'll see you kind of need to get these additional stats, and all stats helps you on your gear.
You saved my life.
You're a saint. Wouldn't have made it without you.
Wouldn't have made it without you. Bless you.
And so there you have it. It's a pretty good build. Like, it's not ice shards, it's not blizzard, it's just something different to play. I've always enjoyed Chain Lightning. This smart damage, like I cast at one guy, it bounces around, goes wherever the hell it wants. It can be kind of tough sometimes on Waller, but it's fun. It's fun to play. Like, aren't video games supposed to be fun? I hope so. Anyway, I'm representing the Sorceresses today as well, so get in there, have a good time, and enjoy Chain Lightning Sorceress. Let me know what you think. I read all the comments, so if it's for you, cool. If it's not, ask questions. Find out. If there's something I didn't mention, let me know. I would not recommend bringing this into PvP. Doesn't do so hot. It's very much only a leveling build. So if you're trying to do the PvP, there's going to be other builds out there. But the Oculus, if you can find the Oculus with this, that'd be huge because you get a tremendous amount of teleport charges. So you can teleport around in PvP and stun things and destroy them. This build would be pretty good for that. I never got the Oculus, so I don't have any gameplay footage to show you, but kind of wet your whistle a little bit with that concept. Anyway, hopefully you enjoy Season 1 of the Malignant. I am the Barber's Nuts. The Malignant Hearts are insane, and I hope you guys have some cool stories to share. Let me know how you've been enjoying the season, and I hope Chain Lightning Sorceress helps you level maybe a little bit differently than you were before. Much love, adios, and thanks for checking out this video. I'll see you guys on the next one.